Courtrooms are frequently the scene of legal disputes rather than violence. However, there are times when the situation takes an unexpected turn, and the inmates find themselves in the spotlight of their courtroom drama. Number 5. Jonathan Schmidt. Few courtroom cases have been as frightening and emotionally fraught as Jonathan Schmidt's attempt to take his own life. This terrible incident occurred in 1995 during a high-profile trial that received national notice. It's a narrative about the complexity of mental health, the rigors of public scrutiny, and the life-changing impact of a single event on everyone involved. Jonathan Schmidt's meteoric rise began with a guest appearance on the Jenny Jones program, a famous daytime talk program noted for its sensationalized fare. Schmidt, a calm and humble man, was asked to the program by a producer who explained that a hidden admirer wished to expose their name. Schmidt had no idea that the admirer would turn out to be Scott Amadeur, another guest on the show. Amadeur admitted his affection for Schmidt in front of a live studio audience during the episode's recording, indicating that he had a crush on him. The audience reacted with laughter and applause, but Schmidt was plainly uncomfortable and perplexed. The piece was broadcast on national television, exposing Schmidt to mockery and disgrace. On March 1995, 3 days after the filming, Schmidt returned to Amadeur's mobile home and fatally shot him. The sad tragedy pushed both men into the public limelight. Schmidt was arrested and charged with murder in the first degree. The case became a symbol of reality television's ethical limitations and the possible repercussions of public humiliation. Schmidt's mental condition became a significant source of dispute as the trial progressed. His defense claimed that the public humiliation on the Jenny Jones show drove him over the edge, causing him to suffer from melancholy and hopelessness. They said Schmidt was not in his right mind when he committed the crime and should only face a lesser charge. Schmidt's trial took an unexpected and tragic turn in March 1996. He pulled out a revolver and attempted to take his own life in the courtroom. The pandemonium and fear that ensued are impossible to describe. Spectators, attorneys, and court officials were all stunned as Schmidt pointed the revolver at his own head and fired. Schmidt miraculously survived the self-inflicted gunshot wound, but his actions that day exacerbated an already problematic case. He was taken to the hospital right away and had life-saving surgery. The event sparked concerns about the sufficiency of courtroom security and the treatment of mentally ill individuals. Schmidt's mental health came under much more scrutiny after this attempt. The court-appointed psychiatrists examined him and determined that he had depression and a personality disorder. Schmidt was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder in Amadeur's demise. The jury agreed with his defense's claim concerning the influence of the Jenny Jones show on his mental condition, resulting in a lower conviction than the initial first-degree crime allegation. Schmidt received a sentence of 25 to 50 years in jail. Number 4. C Angela. C Angela's spectacular courtroom demise is a bizarre story. Consider a criminal dying in a courtroom because he attempted to assault someone while on trial for a series of violent crimes. Everything seems too strange to be real, yet everything happened exactly as recounted in the instance of Angelo. Angelo's childhood is partly shrouded in mystery, with little information accessible about him. What is known is that he had links to the Tongan Crips gang, a prominent criminal organization. This gang operated in various U.S. states, as well as in New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. Angelo's trip into the courtroom, where he eventually passed away, was the result of a 29-count racketeering indictment that targeted 17 gang members. Angelo, who was 25 at the time, was named in this indictment, which focused on organized crime. Angelo and his fellow gang members faced a new set of indictments for their alleged criminal acts in 2014. The series of circumstances that led to Angelo's terrible demise is what makes this case so compelling. First, he found himself on trial in a newly built courthouse that had just opened its doors a week earlier. Second, there was a breakdown in communication between the sitting judge and the marshal in charge of Angelo's courtroom presence. According to the FBI, this oversight was critical. Individuals appearing in court are typically shackled to avoid any efforts to harm others. Court marshals are notified whether or not a defendant is chained. Because the new courthouse lacked key settings, such as table coverings, that would have marked Angelo's unfettered status, several marshals were unaware that he was unrestrained. Angelo took advantage of this error to carry out a risky scheme. Angelo was in the courtroom. As the witness took the stand, Angelo pulled a pen from his seat at the table and unleashed an attack on the witness. A court-martial quickly intervened, ordering Angelo to put down the pen. The witness escaped Angelo's attack by running to safety. Several others in the courtroom hurried to interfere, hoping to stop Angelo's attack. Angelo's aggressive plans, however, were immediately thwarted by a court-martial who used his weapon. Angelo received 4 bullets in the chest. He was quickly rushed to the hospital but passed away as a result of his injuries. Notably, the court-martial in command of these activities was not identified and was not prosecuted for any misconduct. This, however, was not the end of the story. Angelo's family filed a wrongful death case against the marshal and the U.S. Marshal Service, accusing them of excessive force. They claimed that the marshal's 4 rounds were excessive force. The case received national attention, and in 2018, a court ordered the release of the shooting video to the public, ending a 4-year period in which the tape had remained unreleased. Robert Sykes, the family's attorney, claimed that the final 3 rounds were fired when Angelo was already down, resulting in excessive force. Judge Dowell, however, disagreed with this view and dismissed the case. He said that Angelo was plainly attempting to assault the witness and that the marshal's actions were required to avert damage since Angelo had just seconds before launching his attack. Following that, the family decided not to challenge the ruling, and the matter gradually disappeared from public view. Number 3. Slobodan Praljak. This incident follows a different route, concentrating on the case of Slobodan Praljak, who took his own life during his sentencing hearing in 2017. Let's look at how Praljak ended up on trial and what motivated him to take such dramatic measures. Slobodan Praljak was a Bosnian Croat who was born in Yugoslavia in 1945. As he pursued further education, became a professor, and ran an electronic business, his life looked to be pretty conventional. However, during the Croatian War of Independence 1991, his life took a drastic change. Praljak joined the Croatian military and rose to the rank of general, acquiring a pivotal role during the conflict. Nonetheless, his leadership reportedly entailed war crimes, such as attacks on houses of worship, looting, and assaults on people. He was also in command of the infamous drill camp, where Bosniak men faced brutality and mistreatment. Praljak returned to civilian life as a successful businessman after the conflict ended in 1995. He started a production company, a tobacco company, and wrote 25 books, appearing to get his life back on track. However, in the early 2000s, Praljak, along with 5 others, faced war crimes charges brought about by the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. He was indicted on grave accusations after surrendering to authorities, including Geneva Convention breaches, violations of war laws and customs, and crimes against humanity. These claims originated from his high-ranking position throughout the war, when many atrocities were blamed on his men. The ICTY said that Praljak either ordered these crimes or was aware of them, but did not intervene. The trial began in April 2006 and continued for around 7 years. Praljak was found guilty and sentenced to 7 years in jail in 2013. He contested the ruling, claiming innocence. In November 2017, a court in The Hague maintained sections of his sentence while dismissing others. His 20-year prison sentence, however, remained unaffected. Surprisingly, he had already served around 13 years in jail, leaving him with 7 years until eventual release. Praljak, on the other hand, was passionately opposed to the ruling. Following the pronouncement by the judge, he made a stunning remark in the courtroom. He sipped a liquid from a little brown container he carried with him and said, "I just drank poison." The court ordered the curtains to be drawn, and Praljak was quickly transferred to the hospital. Tragically, he passed away as a result of heart failure. Praljak's demise generated various issues, the most pressing of which was how he received the poison. The security checks at the courthouse are stringent, making it extremely difficult for anybody to bring poison inside. Despite extensive examinations, the source of the toxin remained unknown. This perplexing part of the case perplexed many people. Praljak's demise elicited a range of reactions. Some former ICTY judges saw it as a tragedy since it denied war victims the justice they sought. Praljak's demise left a complicated legacy and a slew of unresolved issues, casting a pall over an already difficult chapter of history. Number 2. Claus Grabowski. Claus Grabowski. His story began in Germany, where police identified him as a repeat criminal. Subsequently, he was arrested for strangling a child and was sentenced to probation. One may have thought that this close call would teach Grabowski a lesson, but his malevolent tendencies remained. A few years later, he was arrested again for crimes related to children. While Grabowski first received light treatment in court, the authorities were not as merciful this time. Grabowski was on the verge of committing his most heinous act, setting the stage for a memorable courtroom brawl. Marianne Bach, born on June 3, 1950, was the pivotal person in this horrific story. Her upbringing in West Germany was difficult, with a violent father and a mother who abandoned her when she was a teenager. She became a mother at the age of 16, having to give up her first kid for adoption. At the age of 18, she had another kid, whom she had to give up after being attacked just before giving birth. On November 14, 1972, Marianne gave birth to her third and final child, a beautiful girl called Anna. Marianne was raising Anna on her own, so she worked as a waitress to make ends meet. Their lives, however, remained unsettled. Marianne's long hours at the bar kept her away from Anna, and several of her acquaintances saw that Anna frequently looked after herself, even sleeping at the bar where her mother worked. The sad sequence of events began on May 5, 1980, when Marianne and Anna got into a violent disagreement before Anna left for school. The 7-year-old, who was heartbroken and upset, opted not to go to school that day. Claus Grabowski, a neighbor from their apartment complex, offered her the opportunity to play with his cats in his apartment while she departed, claiming to go to school. Once Anna was at Grabowski's apartment, he assaulted her for hours. Surprisingly, he then strangled her with his fiancé's tights, brutally ending her young life. Grabowski did not escape punishment. When his fiancée found the heinous reality, she promptly called the cops. When officials arrived at the canal's edge, they discovered Anna's lifeless body and quickly caught Grabowski. On March 3, 1981, the trial began, with Grabowski seeking to shift guilt onto the little child he had violently stolen from the world. He said Anna attempted to seduce him, demanded money, and threatened to expose him if he did not cooperate. He depicted himself as the victim in his twisted story. This terrible show of victim-blaming enraged Marianne, who had already been through unbearable suffering. She made the decision to take affairs into her own hands. Marianne carried out her task on March 6, 1981, at an apparently normal court session. Her clothing concealed a .22 caliber Beretta pistol. She responded quickly when she saw Grabowski in the courtroom and fired 7 rounds at him. 6 of the bullets were successful, culminating in Grabowski's demise. A video of the shooting revealed Marianne's determined manner, expressing no emotion even when others interfered to detain her. She exhibited no regret. Marianne received a 6-year jail term for manslaughter, of which she served just 3. She passed away due to pancreatic cancer in 1996 and was buried next to her adored daughter, Anna. Number 1. David Paradiso. David Paradiso's unfortunate path was even worse when he became involved in a judicial saga. It's a fascinating story of courtroom turmoil and violence that began with his arrest in December 2006 for a heinous crime, the suspected demise of his girlfriend, Eileen Pelt. Their relationship had just lasted for a few weeks when a tragedy occurred in the back seat of a car driven by Deborah, Paradiso's mother. Deborah later claimed that she had not heard the couple argue until that fatal day. However, in an odd act, David fatally stabbed his lover in the neck, stating that if he did not act first, she would take his life. The events that followed were even more confusing. Undaunted by the seriousness of his crime, Paradiso compelled his mother to drive him from Loy, California to a place 15 miles distant in Amador County, where he disposed of Eileen's lifeless body along a road. Those who learned of these deeds were astounded by their callousness. To explain the unexplained, Paradiso's defense team claimed that he was under the effect of methamphetamine during this encounter. He was captured and charged with the crime, nevertheless. However, during his trial in 2009, the narrative took an even more bizarre turn. It is critical to establish context prior to this trial. David's mother, Deborah Paradiso, had been profoundly concerned about her son's mental health in the weeks leading up to the court hearings. She noticed indicators of a potential collapse in him, such as a sense of sorrow in his eyes. Furthermore, she suspected he held a firearm, which she reported to authorities. A search of his holding cell turned up no evidence of a weapon, so her suspicions were dismissed. Deborah Paradiso later claimed that her dismissal contributed to the catastrophic events that followed. David Paradiso testified about the death of his girlfriend during his trial in March 2009. He did, however, give a different story than his prior statements, discarding his argument that he acted in fear for his life. He stated this time that he took Eileen's life because he thought she deserved not to live. This dramatic shift in his story was both intriguing and concerning. A pause was ordered during this critical trial, presided over by San Juan County Superior Court Judge Cinda Fox, after Deborah, David's mother, left the courtroom in tears. She had spoken out against her son taking the stand, expressing worries about his mental health. This outburst caused a hiccup in the proceedings. During this little respite, David Paradiso made his move. He came up behind Judge Fox and attacked Fox with an unidentifiable sharp weapon. He stabbed the judge numerous times and attacked her physically as well. Several courtroom visitors attempted to intercede, but it was Lowy Detective Eric Bradley who grabbed his gun and shot Paradiso. Despite her injuries, Judge Fox was successfully evacuated from the courtroom on a stretcher and recovered well. David Paradiso passed away as a result of the gunshot wounds he sustained during the event. This unexpected turn of events left a path of destruction in its wake. David's family, particularly his mother Deborah and brother Aaron Paradiso, were overcome with sadness and stated their conviction that the tragedy may have been avoided if law officials had handled his declining mental health differently. Aaron said that his brother suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, a confirmed and well-known illness. He contended that David should not have been called to the stand in his current mental state.